Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a really great day. I have a topic that's been on my mind for a while and it's very different than what I normally discuss, but I think it's something that has a lot of value and I think it's something that we could really all benefit from. And that is the topic of overly negative video game reviewers. Now, you might be asking, what exactly are you referring to? What exactly are we talking about? What type of reviewer is overly negative? And I'm talking about the type of reviewer that is negative to a fault. I'm referring to the types of reviewers that make video game reviews or talk about video games and specifically try to analyze and critique a game as if they are the developer or as if they are some sort of moral authority about video games. Now, I can already hear a couple people going, well, don't you also review video games? And I don't really like to put that nomenclature on it, but because I can't really think of a better word, I'd like to say that I talk about video games and how I personally feel about video games. But I never, ever look for a game just to crap on it, just to say, hey, this game is really bad, you shouldn't play it. Or to look for a game that everybody really likes and say, hey, here's why I don't like it. Now, those are perfectly valid opinions, but one of the problems that I see a lot with certain video game reviewers, and I will get to a few that I'm specifically talking about in just a little bit, but one of the biggest issues I have with certain videos like this is the fact that they take these games that are really well reviewed, really well regarded, and they just make them overly negative and really paint a bad light on it, but for no good reason and for really vapid and empty criticisms that really don't amount to much more than I don't like it more than X or Z game. We have probably all seen a video about a game that we like that somebody else doesn't. And one of the things I like to personally do is watch those videos and understand where the reviewer is coming from. A really great reviewer, I think, is G-Man Lives. Now, he reviews a lot of first-person shooters, and one of the really great things he does is he makes it known that he is not a moral authority on the video game market. He is just a guy playing games that he enjoys. And what that does is it allows you to take away any hostility that you might have about the game he's talking about in a negative light, and it allows you to go into it as he personally does not find these things good, or he personally does not find these things as a valid, fun reason to enjoy the game. But the one thing he does not do is shame you for it. Unless it's in a joke. He does tend to do that a lot. But honestly, I still feel that he's very genuine about his criticisms. And his criticisms come from a well thought out and well structured point of view. And that's the type of reviewer that I really respect. It's the type of reviewer that for me is the reason why I like making certain review videos or why I like talking about certain games in a different light, because I never want to come at you as a viewer and tell you that you should not play a game just because I don't like it. Because honestly, I'm just a guy on YouTube telling you what I think about a game, and it doesn't do me any favors to tell you not to try something if you are interested in it. Now, naturally, I'm sure you're curious as to what type of channel would do such a thing. What type of channel is overly negative? What's a good example of somebody who does not know how to take the criticisms of one game and not unevenly compare them to another? If you have been around YouTube at all in the video game space, you may have a couple in mind, but the first one for me that comes to mind, because I've been watching some of his videos recently, is Under the Mayo. Now, ironically, Under the Mayo and me share a lot of similarities in terms of the video games we prefer. I really enjoy fast, action-paced video games like Doom Eternal or Hotline Miami or games of that nature. Specifically, he and me also enjoy the same franchises a lot. I absolutely love Resident Evil. He loves Resident Evil. I love Doom. He loves Doom. I like God of War a lot. He likes God of War a lot. There's a lot of similarities in our preferences and what we enjoy, but the difference is we do not review video games the same way. He personally likes to hold his franchises, those 3 franchises as a good example, as the top pinnacle of what video games can and should be. But he unfairly criticizes and compares a lot of other games in different genres to those games in those franchises. Now, some of you may be saying, well, what's wrong with comparing a really good quality title game like God of War or Doom to something, lesser? Well, the problem becomes when you change the genre, the entire expectations of what a game can do in that genre is different. So when you have something like a beat 'em up or a shooter or some sort of arcade fighting game, it becomes different than comparing it to a shooter or a survival horror game. There's no reason to bring other genres into that discussion about that specific game genre if it's a completely separate genre. A really great example of this is during one of his live streams, he was playing Elden Ring. Now, I have a lot of feelings about the Elden Ring stream that he had. There's a really great video. In fact, I'll leave it in the link below. It's from Under the Wrinkling Sean, who did a great job of showing the worst moments of this Elden Ring stream. But what was so unfortunate is during the stream, as he was playing Elden Ring, he really did not like the game. He did not enjoy a lot of aspects about it, yet he continued to play it, which that's fair, give a game a fair shake. But the problem is, he started to compare it to things like Doom Eternal and things of a completely different caliber. You cannot compare Doom Eternal and Elden Ring. They're two very separate games. So the idea that he was even remotely considering that they could even be comparable is really weird, especially when he has such a high opinion of Doom Eternal and such a low opinion of Elden Ring, because genuinely, they don't mesh at all when you're trying to compare them. Quality is obviously in the eye of the beholder, but the problem is you cannot compare two uneven items. I probably don't need to say it, but they're both really great games. Elden Ring is probably my favorite game of the year, and Doom Eternal is my favorite game of all time. But the difference is, I don't look at those two as synonymous with each other. I don't look at Elden Ring and say, this is better because it has a better camera, or because it's got more options for combat, or because it's got a bigger world. Because Doom Eternal is not trying to be the same game that Elden Ring is. So to bring up a comparison about either one is really just a faulty point and doesn't bring any sort of valid criticism to either game. Now, I'd like to point out that I'm not trying to start a hit piece on Mayo. I think some of his videos are okay, and I do think some of his opinions on certain games are valid, but one of the problems I've noticed while I've been looking through his catalog of videos is that a lot of his videos tend to find a comparison to a game that is not relevant to the game that he's reviewing. And that creates a bevy of problems and also becomes a false equivalency of criticism, because criticism in and of itself should be something that is valid, especially if you're trying to be objective, which in Mayo's case, I believe he's trying to be. But the problem is Mayo acts as if he is a moral authority on the matter of objective criticism. And the problem is, it's very flawed. In order to be objective, you cannot have a bias going into a product or a project. You cannot have a bias in an already expected notation of what something's going to be when you haven't even experienced what the product is you're working with. A great example is looking to buy a new car. You go in looking at a car, but the car you're looking at is a different style of car that you have. Let's say you have a sedan, so you've got a small little Chevy Malibu, right? And then you go and you look to buy a Jeep. Well, a Jeep is going to function significantly different than a Malibu. Obviously, they're both going to drive, they're both going to go forward, backward, and turn, but the difference is the Jeep is much more suited for things like off-roading, or maybe snowy environments, or maybe environments that you wouldn't typically drive the Malibu in. The difference is the people who are going to buy a Jeep and the people who are going to buy a Chevy Malibu are two very different people. They're not made for the same customer. And the idea that a game should be made the same way as another when it's in a very different genre and it's made for very different people is very unfortunate, and it's a poor display of the ability to criticize things unbiasedly and also give a valid and informative opinion. And it makes what you're trying to say hold so much less weight than if you thought it out just a little bit more and said something that made sense. You see, when it comes to video game reviews, you're supposed to be able to be authority on what you find valuable. And that's really all you can do. Because even though there are some objective things, like obviously if a game has a bug or a glitch, that's an objective thing. You can say, hey, I know it's not supposed to have that. it's obviously not supposed to be in the game because the rest of the game has proven up to this point that it's not the standard. So it's understandable if somebody is able to point that out. The difference, though, is when you're pointing out something that is irrelevant and a personal nitpick, that is not unbiased and it's not a valid criticism because it's coming from a place of subjectivity. So when I see people like Under the Mayo or Video Game Donkey or these armchair video game reviewers who are giving their opinions, I think it's totally fine that somebody wants to give their opinion on a game. Like I said, I do that all the time. But the difference is I'm not going to tell somebody they should not experience something because it doesn't hold up to my standard of 3 other different games that I like more than this game. That's the beauty of being human. We're all unique, we're all different, we all have different tastes. If I really like chess and somebody really likes checkers, is it right for me to say chess is better than checkers just because I like it more than checkers? No, that doesn't make any sense. And the same is true with video games. I can't tell you that Doom Eternal is a better game than Elden Ring just because I like Doom Eternal the most out of any other video game. And so when somebody like Under the Mayo specifically does things like that, I have an issue. And I think it ruins gaming as a whole because it starts to create this very toxic and very bad mentality of, hey, if no new video game or any other video game that I play can't live up to these few titles, then they're not worth my time and they're not worth anybody else's. And that is a very unfortunate mindset to have. Video games, like any other medium or any other form of entertainment, all deserve to have a day in the spotlight for somebody. And it doesn't have to be you, and it doesn't have to be me, but if there's somebody out there who finds enjoyment with some of these games, let them enjoy what they enjoy. And with that, everybody, thank you so much for stopping by the channel once again and clicking on one of my videos. It really means a lot, and I'm very grateful for the fantastic community that we've built here. I am slowly getting close to that 1,000 subscriber mark, and I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the love and support you've shown me. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't, feel free to leave a dislike. Do me a favor and go out there and play a game that maybe you would have never tried. Try something new and see if it's something you like. But with all that being said, enjoy yourselves, guys. Have a great day and take care of yourselves.